Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London with another watch video, and today we're taking a look at the Rolex Submariner 41mm. As with all my reviews, let's go back in time now and take a look at the history of this watch. I won't look too in detail because I've done lots of other reviews looking at the Submariner history. I'll just look at a real basic version. So if you want to look more in depth at that, then go check out one of those other videos. But moving back to 1953, which is when Rolex first released the Submariner, it was designed as a dive watch for divers, professional divers. And it had a rotating bezel which allowed them to time their dive or lapse time, so they knew how much time was left in their oxygen tanks. The watch gained popularity though with the general public, not just divers, because it was a really hard wearing watch. Obviously being able to withstand 100 or 200 meters dive depth or water pressure, it was able to take a few dinks and knocks from the desk during daily use. So massively gained popularity with the general public, and because of that the demand for a date window arose, and Rolex in 1966 with the reference 1680 added a date window, and that meant the watch was just set for success. Everyone bought that watch. It was incredibly popular. It was Rolex's most sold model at the time, and still is today one of the most popular models you can get from Rolex. It's not hard to see why. It's a fantastic watch. But we're going to skip on to 2012, which is when we saw the release of the reference 1166 series of Submariners, and that featured the new super case, which was like a larger case size, slightly bulkier, wider lugs. Looks really cool. It's basically exactly the same as what we're looking at today. It featured ceramic bezels as well, which was the first on Submariner at that time too. Later on in 2012, a couple years later, we saw those watches discontinued in favor of a new 41mm Submariner. So that was last year, which was a big, bold move from Rolex. People didn't see it coming. Really, it was an unusual one. People couldn't quite work out why Rolex did that. I think the general consensus was, if it isn't broke, then why fix it? And people loved the 40mm case size of the Submariner, so people were a little bit confused as to why Rolex changed that in favor of a larger 41mm case diameter. Actually, people were a little bit annoyed that Rolex didn't spend their attention elsewhere in the collection and made a very strange move like that. Anyway, collectors tend to prefer the 40mm over the 41mm, but we are seeing increasing popularity towards the 41mm. And the reason being really is actually that the case size, despite the fact that 1mm usually does make a big difference in watches, the case size doesn't feel too big when you put it on. It doesn't feel like a massive drastic change. As you'll see on my wrist, it doesn't wear crazy different. I will do a comparison video between the 41 and the 40 so people can see side by side, and the difference isn't major. Other watches that got changed in the collection, obviously Rolex revamped the whole Submariner collection, replacing every watch with a 41mm version. But they also changed the design of the Hulk, got rid of the green dial on the Hulk, replaced that with a black dial, and the same goes for the Smurf. They replaced the Smurf's color also and changed it to a deeper blue, kind of a more boring blue in my opinion. Put that on the bezel and made the dial black. So that watch has turned into a little bit more of a boring watch in my opinion. The watch has been going up and up and up, the 41mm, and so has the 40mm. The Submariners are one of the most safe investment watches you can buy from Rolex. Super reliable, always going to go up, and they've doubled in the last few years. So it's really, a solid investment piece, and they don't kind of get influenced by crazy movements in prices from other brands and other watches like Daytona does, for example. Your money is definitely more, safer in a watch like this, if that makes sense, less volatile. That concludes the history of the Submariner. Let's take a look at the features of this watch. We're going to start with the clasp, as always. The clasp on this watch is the Rolex Glide Lock clasp. The Glide Lock is a really cool clasp designed originally with the intention of a professional diver using this piece, but basically that the professional diver could wear it on their wrist during the day, and then when they go diving, they could kind of open up the bracelet, make it larger, or using the clasp, and then place it over the top of their wetsuit. So rather than having to add extra links into the watch, this was a more secure, easier, faster way of doing it. And it works brilliantly for people that have, you know, expanding wrists in the summer and contracting wrists in the winter, which all of us do. There's many times where a watch feels uncomfortable in the summer when it becomes too tight because of the heat. So this means you can quickly adjust your watch, make it a little bit bigger or smaller in the winter, and it fits much better. So every time I've had a Submariner, I've used that glide lock clasp a lot, even, you know, just weekly, just changing it and making it more comfortable. So yeah, really great clasp, fantastic addition to this watch. And it's also all in brushed finish as well. We've got polished sides, but the top is brushed. It is quite a large clasp, which does make it a bit of a scratch magnet, and being in a brush finish too does mean that the scratches can tend to show up pretty easily, especially if it's on a metal laptop as well. Moving on to our bracelet, we've got a standard oyster bracelet on this watch in brushed finish with polished sides. The brush finish, again, a little bit of a scratch magnet, but it means it is quite hard wearing. They feel really solid on your wrist and they're extremely comfortable. They don't pinch hairs at all. Definitely one of my favorite bracelets out there, and I'm not really a bracelet fan. Moving on to our case now, we've got a 41mm case size on this watch, of course. The case is finished in pretty much all brush finish, so the tops of the lugs, and also the case back, and then we've got polished everywhere else, so polished on the sides and around the crown guards as well. As we said before, the case on this newer 41mm is only 1mm bigger than the classic 40mm case size, but it's barely noticeable. I mean, 1mm I know sounds like nothing, but in watch world, that does mean a big difference. But it doesn't feel too much, and I think it's because Rolex hasn't proportionately increased the size of this watch by increasing the depth as well. They've actually just kept the same depth and just made it a larger watch, right? A larger diameter. And for that reason, it kind of sits closer to your wrist, or it creates the illusion of sitting flatter and closer to your wrist, which makes it feel not so large compared to if they just sized it up. So it definitely doesn't feel too large, and I'm super picky when it comes to watch sizes. I prefer smaller watches, and I don't find this kind of offensive in any way. Moving on now to our bezel, we've got a ceramic bezel, or as Rolex calls it, cerachrome. This one is in black, and it features the platinum inlays, meaning the ceramic means that it doesn't wear out over time or get scratched, sorry, and kind of fade color-wise. And the actual inlays are platinum because, again, they don't fade with time or kind of be scratched away like they used to on older bezels, the aluminium bezels. So really hard wearing bezel. The bezel often takes a big brunt of the wear on a watch head. Moving on to our dial now, we've got a fantastic black dial, which is just iconic Submariner with those kind of Maxi markers. We've got white gold hands and index surrounds as well. This one obviously being the date variation, featuring the date window at 3 o'clock and also a cyclops bubble to enlarge the date to make it easier to read. The dial is very legible, obviously increasing now in size as well, means it is even more readable. That concludes the features on this watch. Let's look at whether or not I would own it. I would definitely own it. As I said before, I'm a really picky person when it comes to watch sizes. I tend to shy away from larger watches, and this one is actually, or this one does actually wear pretty true to the original 40 anyway. So it doesn't make a huge difference. When they first released it, I was really put off and thought that I would never own this watch. But having had it on my wrist a few times since they've released it, I can definitely say that I would own this piece. Let us know in the comments what you think of this watch. Would you own the 41mm, or would you prefer to own the 40mm? The 41 is still pushing above the 40mm in terms of prices, but I'm not sure how long that will last. The 41mm really always will be the classic and what people probably will want to collect. Let us know in the comments if you'd own perhaps another watch in the Rolex collection. Do you think maybe they might update the GMT Master to be a 41mm watch? Who knows? Let us know what other watches you'd like us to review as well. And as always, if you're interested in this watch or any other watch in the Rolex collection, then don't hesitate to contact us. Our details are in the description. And also, end of the video, it'd be a pleasure to call this watch into stock for you.